Okay, welcome everyone. Great to see a packed house here today. We'll declare meeting open at 4:02. Can I just check with you, Councillor Burgoyne, that you can hear us loud and clear?
As you can, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Okay, disclaimer. Members of the public are advised that recommendations to Council contained within this agenda can be subject to change. Applications and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until written advice is received confirming Council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary Council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by Council. Council members and the community are reminded that should an exception resolution be passed, this has the effect of making the decision to accept the officer's recommendation stated in the agenda as a Council's decision without change. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of Country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders both past, present and emerging. Attendance. The Shire President, in accordance with Regulation 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, approves a below listed councillor to attend this ordinary council meeting electronically. The Shire President is satisfied that council is meeting the regulations defined as a suitable place as stipulated in Regulation 14A Part 4B. Councillors approved to attend electronically is Councillor Francis Burgoyne, attending from Coolina Emergency Services Centre, 18 Cocky Bend, Collie, Western Australia, 6225. Welcome, Councillor Burgoyne. Procedural motion. Councillor Gillett put forward the following: that Council suspend Standing Orders Part 8, Clause 8.5, members to indicate their intention to speak and to rise when speaking, to allow members to remain seated when speaking, to improve the quality of the audio recording for the meeting. As a seconder, Councillor Bromham. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. An apology from Councillor Jackson and a leave of absence from Councillor Boylan. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Any councillors? Nil. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is by Emily McDowell. Finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 note in last winter's coat pocket. You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions and inaccurate conclusions you drew that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering of who you were before the world got its hands on you.
Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. We'll go through Councillor Lovett first.
As per the screen, thank you.
Councillor Caporetto.
Yes, as per the screen, thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor Beach.
Nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Councillor Crispin.
As per the screen, thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
As per the screen, thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
All correct, thanks, Mr. President.
2 pages for Councillor Dickinson.
As per the screen, thank you.
Councillor Burgoyne.
As per the screen, thanks, Mr. President.
Councillor Bromham.
As per the screen, President.
Councillor Beach.
I'm here
Second
twice.
coming.
I'll declare twice.
aye as per the screen. Thank you, Trey.
Yeah.
Councillor Caboni.
I'll declare an impartiality interest in the Harvey Brunswick Football Club item in the budget. As I'm a member of Harvey Brunswick, and I'll stay in the chambers and vote for it on its merits.
Okay. Okay, item 6. Response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Public question time. We have Mr. Joe Castro in relation to item 12.3.1, development application, use not listed on lot 101, number 96, Binningup Road, Binningup. Welcome, Mr. Castro.
So I'm Joe Castro. I'm Director of J&D Nominees Proprietary Limited. I own and operate a horticultural business in Myla and Binningup. My property is in the priority agricultural zone, and the proposed site, my property is in the priority agricultural zones, so it's zone priority agriculture, and is in the and it has a 500 metre buffer zone surrounding my property because we're right on the edge of it. As part of operating an intensive horticultural business, I am constantly having to contend with hot weather and extreme hot days and weather conditions. We often operate our vehicles at night, forklifts, trucks, everything going around at night, and pumps come on all times of the day and night. So it could be an issue with the proposed thing next door, proposed camp next door. One of the concerns is water quality. We have a proposed sewage system located approximately 100 metres from our draw port from our dam. We irrigate out of a dam. It's just a hole in the ground in the limestone, and having a sewage system within 100 metres of that could create cross-contamination, especially in summer when the water table goes down. It could leak into our dam. We have to constantly do every quarter we have to do testing, and we've got to check for nitrates, and if the nitrate levels go up in our water, the DOW have to be notified. If the nitrates go up and we get E. coli in our water, we could even be forced to stop irrigating on that site. We have spent approximately in the last 2 years $2 million acquiring more land at Binningup. So we only own 50 acres, we own now 100. We spent nearly $1 million putting irrigation and all that in, and if this happens and we stop, we're going to lose a lot of money. And the value of the property will obviously decrease. Water is a very valuable asset in the coastal area. Horticultural operations include, because we're right alongside within 150 metres of the proposed camp. We often use sprayers at night and all that. We irrigate. We occasionally put fumigation out through the ground to kill out weeds and disease in the paddock before we plant carrots and onions. That drifts across the paddock and it smells quite bad. And if that goes through the camp next door to us, it's going to be what do we do? Great concern of mine is the increase of theft and damage. We have diesel currently, at the moment pinched every now and then, with an ever increasing price of diesel going up. It's going to become a great problem in the future if you're going to have 1,000 people next door. to my opinion, that the project was not thought out properly. I was not informed and only found out by accident in the West in May. So yeah, that's about all.
Thanks, Joe. Did you have any questions?
No.
No. Okay.
Fine.
So we'll put that down as deputation, but I won't send you a fine in the mail, Joe. We do have a question from Mrs. Ferguson. So, Sheila, would you like to come and ask your questions with regards to item 12.4.3? Welcome.
Sheila Ferguson, Unit 458 Old Coast Road, Australind. Excuse me. My questions relate to item 12.4.3 Annual Budget 22-23. It's possible they were mentioned at the Special Council meeting on 5th of July, but it was difficult to hear and follow what was being said on the YouTube video. The first one is, on page 116 of the budget, it is shown that in the Planning and Economic Development section, $45,000 was allocated in the 21-22 budget for legal expenses, but that the actual expenditure was $127,600, which is almost 3 times the budget. $100 was recovered. Please would you explain A, why this item went so much over budget and what the money was spent on, and B, what legal expenses you foresee for planning and economic development in 2022 to 23 that require an allocation of $100,000.
Mr. Hall.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mrs. Ferguson. It's unfortunate the Shire often gets dragged into to matters that require us to have legal representation. Some of those are through the State Administrative Tribunal matters, and others are external matters. And in this particular case, it was a significant amount of requirement for including lawyers in regard to some matters that are occurring in Binningup in regard to the disused golf course land through there, and probably that's as much as I'm probably able to say. So, so as far as this year is concerned, hopefully we won't be requiring that amount of money for legal representation again, and I can't recall how much we put in the budget for this coming year, but I think it was in the order of around about 100.
The second one, on page 70 of the budget, $60,000 is allocated for community engagement. On page 69, it's stated that $27,000 of this is for, quote, have your say, bang the table. As far as I can see, have your say is a page on the Shire's website where the public can submit comments on various things. Please would you explain A, what this item is, B, how the $27,000 is to be spent, and C, what benefits have been shown to arise from this, including any supporting evidence.
Mr. Winter.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for the question. So the $27,000 is for the licence for the software. We conduct it all in-house, and it's in Council's endeavour to encourage more participation with its residents and getting information out and back in that communication. So far has been quite successful and looks to improve as well. Thank you.
Can I ask how you measure that success? What evidence there is, and will you continue to evaluate whether it's worth the money? How have you measured your success?
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. The Shire does have a communications and engagement strategy, and off the top of my head, by record, on Q3 in the last financial year, we had 1.7 thousand people comment on that or provide surveys through that portal.
So will you you'll continue to evaluate it?
We continue to provide that feedback
Thank
to
you.
Council on a quarterly basis.
Thank you. Thirdly, on page 48 of the budget, $45,000 is allocated for council refreshments / entertainment. On page 47, the note explains that this includes the staff Christmas function, the WA week dinner and the annual dinner. Please would you say how much of the total of $45,000 has been allocated to each of these 3 items?
I can take that one on notice if that's all right.
Yep, that's fine.
I couldn't give you an answer off the cuff, thank you.
And lastly, I'm in the lucky position of having no dependents, and I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay the rates, as many people will. It seems to me that there may be room in these items for the budget to be trimmed for the benefit of ratepayers who are at present facing a 7% rise in rates as well as a reduction in the discount from 5.5% to 3%. Will you please consider these points when you consider the draft budget, and if not now, will you flag them for consideration when the 22-23 budget is being prepared?
Yes, Council will take those on notice. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
I have a copy of my questions so they can be accurately recorded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the public? Welcome, Paul.
President, councillors, members of the public, I understand I've got an opportunity for a deputation and I'm registered for that, and I just want to confirm it.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So my question is, have all elected members received the briefing note circulated from my office which outlines the points? Thank you. Thank you. That's the first question. Second question is, was it clear from Mr. Castro's presentation that his view was that this application for the TWA will impact his farming operations in a negative sense?
I think, given the nods
Yes.
around the table.
Thank you. They're my two questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the public? Yes. Please come forward, just state name and address, please. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President and councillors. I'm a member of the Harvey Precinct Reference Group, and at our last meeting it was decided that the revised option 2 of the architect's plan was to go to council. I think it goes to council today for approval. This included, does this include the correct access to the Harvey Creative Arts Centre, which is situated in the Old Catholic building, and also parking for the group? When we left that meeting, we weren't aware that the Harvey Creative Arts wanted to shift from the school into different premises. From discussions held with Jenny Devereaux, who was mentioned at the last meeting, with reference to the meeting by Pauline and the architects, she told a lot of people that she felt bullied into agreeing with that. Tim, so the questions are, I'll find them. Is the correct access on the plan for Harvey Creative Arts been addressed? Because I haven't seen the new plan yet. And also the parking. The RSL building, is that worth keeping? The Shire is getting rid of most of our beautiful library and giving us a donut. Surely there would be space in the library for the RSL to hold their meetings and the memorabilia. And the RSL building is being, I'm sure Tim Devereaux will speak on this, or has spoken on several occasions about the asbestos in that building. Now, if we've got the opportunity to get rid of that risk for future generations, surely it's our responsibility to do that. And that's all I wanted to know is, are those the access and the parking being addressed in that new plan? Because I haven't seen the new plan.
I can address your queries. And I believe you had mentioned that you were at the last community reference group meeting, and as part of that meeting the architect presented the option 2 revised plan, which was provided on the screen. And as part of that one, the 2 buildings that the community reference group had requested to be retained, being the old St Anne's classroom and the old infant health building, remained on that plan.
Yeah.
So as part of that, the parking that was to be provided on the site of the old infant health clinic building has now been impacted. So as part of the original plan, that was to be a parking area, and at the moment, with that building retained, as part of the option 2 revised plan, that parking will be removed. Though there is the potential through further discussions in the detailed design to potentially look at whether there could be car parking at the rear of that building. So that's something that could be considered. In regards to the access for the arts and craft group, that will be provided in the existing building while you remain in the existing building, and as part of the option 2 revised plan, there's a section of that new build allocated for the arts and craft. So as part of that, if option 2 revised is endorsed by council, the parking will need to be considered as part of what that infant health clinic building was going to provide. So that's something that can be looked at as part of the future detailed design. In regards to the RSL building, and I'm aware that there's been ongoing conversations and deputations in regards to the asbestos levels on that building, and I believe there is going to be a deputation by Mr Devereaux. We undertook an independent audit assessment of that building, and as part of that there is no rectification that is needed, immediate actions that need to be undertaken. And the RSL hall is one of 36 buildings that contain asbestos in the Shire. 2 of those are moderate risk, but the RSL is rated as a low risk. And as part of either of the plans that have been presented for the Harvey Community Precinct, they aren't impacted in regards to whether the RSL hall building remains or whether it's removed. So at this stage, it's not a major consideration in the assessment of those 2 options.
What about the access to the art and craft?
Are you talking in regards to the new arts and craft facility or the old arts and craft facility?
The old one.
Yeah,
because I was under the impression, or actually I was told that they wanted to stay there in the art and craft, the old art and craft building.
Yeah, look, that's been part of a discussion that I believe has been had with some members of the Arts and Craft Society. As part of the planning for the precinct, there is new facilities allocated, and I know that there's been engagement with members in regards to providing new facilities. So that's something that council will need to consider in regards to what facilities we are providing in the precinct development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further public questions? Okay, move on to item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Mr Devereaux. Welcome.
Thank you to the Shire President, councillors and staff for the opportunity to speak. I'm absolutely flabbergasted at this late stage that you continue down the same line. From the beginning of the process of the redevelopment, the Harvey District Creative Arts Centre was told their building was going to be demolished and they had to move, no choice. There's been so much fake news and information spread that we've ended up with something second rate. I was going to read something out, but it seems pointless. You're all deaf. The RSL Hall, the RSL group, it was argued previously that they wanted to stay and retain that building. At the agenda meeting last week, it was said that at the stakeholders meeting, the RSL wanted to move their things into the War Memorial Library and have an office or space in there, which I've had discussions for 2 hours with one of the representatives who's currently putting all their data onto, all their information onto a database. And I'd like to see that in there with a touchscreen or something in the library and accessible. For someone to come in and say there's no risk with the asbestos on that hall, I was told that before. I came and showed pictures of exposed asbestos, and within a week I got a phone call and there's people around there doing work on the building. The building is old and will need hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on it. We saw the estimates for the other 2 buildings that you're now keeping. Totally ridiculous. This building is in much worse condition. You're going to spend $500,000 on that, retaining it, for a playgroup that uses it a couple of hours a week and occasionally is hired by other people. People are being put at risk by that building. There is a National Asbestos Safety Eradication Agency who want to stop people getting mesothelioma in Australia. In the last 10 years, 40,000 people in Australia have died from mesothelioma. And in the next 10 years, another 40,000 people will die. And we need some leadership from everyone here to change that. Everyone thinks asbestos is okay, we cover it up. We've got a painter in town currently dying of mesothelioma because of his work covering up asbestos. Well, I need someone to stand up and make an effort. We cannot go down this lane. And the RSL is... I respect the RSL. My grandfather's cousin left Harvey in the armed forces in 1914. My family have been involved, different members of my family. One of his son actually died in the sinking of the Sydney. I respect the RSL. I'm happy to support and do support the RSL. I would even contribute to paying towards a display in the library and in the new buildings. To say that we don't need to demolish the hall, we're now talking about a car parking behind the old child health group. I mean, these are $1 million architects. If that's the best they can come up with, push the RSL hole, create a corridor through there with some car parking. We've got the art painting in the old Harvey Water Court building over the road. Create a bit in Busselton. They've used the old building and created beautiful things. Please, that building should go. There's no reason for it to stay. It doesn't have disabled access. It's not insulated. All those things that Pauline was saying the other day that the other buildings needed, yet already have. Please demolish the building and let's move on as per the national plan to remove asbestos. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Miss Lynn Watt, did you have a deputation? All good? Okay. Mr. Paul Kotsoglo, with regards to item 12.3.1, development application, use not listed, lot 101, Binnup Road.
Mr. President, councillors, chief executive and officers, members of the gallery, people watching online. My name's Paul Kotsoglo. I'm here representing the residents and interested parties of Binnup who wish to oppose the application that's provided to you in item 12.3.1. I'm the Managing Director of Planning Solutions, and today we seek your consideration of the matter in front of you and a determination to refuse the proposal as it is, we submit, not consistent with orderly and proper planning, not consistent with the objectives and purposes of the general farming zone in which the proposal is being presented, and is not consistent with District Planning Scheme number 1. Importantly, I understand you're being presented with a summary of a report that's over 600 pages long that was received on the 12th of July, and a report circulated on the 15th of July suggesting that this going out to get public comment is appropriate. And I say that that's not appropriate, and I say it for the following reasons. Clause 4.2.5 of this Shire's planning scheme provides a fork in the road, a choice to either determine that this use is not an appropriate use in this location, or consider that it may be considered as a use and may be subject to public consultation. Then you would, as an elected body, determine whether or not it would be appropriate, with or without conditions, to approve. We say it's just simply not appropriate. We say it for a series of reasons. And those reasons include it's not consistent with the objectives of your general farming zone. This site is located in a general farming zone. It's located adjacent to a conservation category wetland. It's located on multiple use wetlands, and in the broader scheme of things, multiple use wetlands can in fact be developed for all sorts of purposes. But we say, because this land is zoned general farming, it uses something like 20 hectares of general farming land, which is important, particularly when you see the issues around food production, food security, that general farming land and particularly intensive horticulture is protected. Because when we do have climate disasters and problems that are arising around storms, intense activity, we see our food supply, our food security being jeopardised. Mr. Castro spoke earlier. He's the property adjoining this property on priority agricultural land. Now this is in the buffer. This buffer is intended to protect the intensive horticulture and the priority agricultural land from incursion of sensitive uses. He's told you that he sprays, and all the horticulturalists spray, and they conduct business to ensure the security and the proper production of their food. I say that going out, following the recommendation that you have in front of you with 4.25b, allows the door to be opened for this to be appealed. If you follow 4.25a, which I've outlined in the briefing note that's been sent and circulated, we say you don't have the ability, or the applicant doesn't have the ability to appeal this. It's a decision that your elected body says this use is not appropriate in this location. Now, it was a hefty document. I've read through it. I'm not sure that 3 days allows a proper assessment of that application, and I don't think it's appropriate for a whole series of reasons. But the general farming zone tables 27 to 29 in your planning scheme require consideration of some issues. Three key points. Those points were circulated, but I'll make it public so that everyone understands. The objectives are: the local government intends to encourage these areas to continue to be used for viable large-scale farming activity. 1. 2. The local government will encourage and promote good farming, animal husbandry and soil conservation. And 3. Some limited tourism and recreational activity may be permitted where no adverse impact to the primary agricultural production will result. Mr. Castro, who's invested with his money in our community, in the Shire of Harvey, has said to you today it will jeopardise his business. He's had to undergo training, like most horticulturalists, to use the chemicals that he has to apply so that we can eat. Developing land over which, with accommodation that we're told today will accommodate 500 people, doesn't make sense. The Bunbury region plan, and I was working down here in the 1990s, was founded on providing employment in places like Kemerton. And make no mistake, the Albermere project out at Kemerton is strongly supported by the community, but housing needs to be provided for its workers. A drive-in, drive-out camp will not support your local economy other than the fuel stations, other than a very superficial investment by those workers who will spend, but won't spend in the same way that your community members who invest and buy their homes do. We say this erodes the foundation of orderly and proper planning by taking away the investment that you rightfully should expect as a shire, as a property developer, as a shopping centre owner, with the 500 people that would come to work here. I think the argument's compelling. The separation distances, and importantly, the separation distances between sensitive land uses in the EPA guidance note, gives you a direction that you should take. That direction is separate sensitive uses from uses which are problematic. That's why they're isolated. That's why we have horticulture removed from the residential areas of Binningup and everywhere else. This, the applicant's report acknowledges the adjoining market garden, Mr Castro's market garden, is 230 metres from the closest accommodation. It doesn't protect the large-scale farming. It doesn't promote good farming and animal husbandry, in my opinion, and I say that as an expert. And I say it respectfully and humbly. But importantly, there are impacts that will occur with the 7 laundries, with the disposal of effluent on the water table, on the areas that Mr Castro and other farmers have a legitimate legal right to use. We say, and you've seen our submission, we say this is not appropriate. I've had a long association with Binningup. I know a number of people there. This is not a priority agricultural area. We accept that, we acknowledge that, but it adjoins one. It is in a buffer to that area. That buffer is intended to stop the incursion of sensitive uses, which 500 people densely accommodated will be a sensitive use. You can put a fence around it, but the fence will not stop the spray drift going over the site. I'm not here to talk about the development application. I'm here to talk about the choice of land use and whether it's appropriate. You have the opportunity, and we heard Mr Hall earlier say, there are costs that go with defending appeals and those sorts of things. This would be a matter that's in front of the Development Assessment Panel. The local authority doesn't have the opportunity, once this decision is made, to rigorously impose conditions, management conditions, operational plan conditions, or series of other conditions like traffic movement. That becomes the Development Assessment Panel's responsibility. And if conditions are appealed, the council might be invited in to speak, but they don't have a place at the table. And I know that because I was, up until this afternoon, the chair of the Development Assessment Panel that applied to this area. I say to you, please, on behalf of the residents, and we had at very short notice 60 people show up last night, and if anyone knows what the rain was like, that was a good number. There are a lot of other people that couldn't get there, and there is strong support for the opposition to this. I'll just take you back to the choice. 4.25A puts this to rest. It would be appropriate for Albemarle and others to go and find appropriate urban land in places like Treendale, in places like your town centre, to ensure the vitality and the economy is well supported. A large company has a social responsibility and should operate with a strong social licence. We say this temporary 10 to 15 year time frame doesn't reflect that. It doesn't reflect the investment that should occur with the workforce that it demands. Mr Presiding Member, or Mr Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Do I sit down? I presume nobody asked me questions, but if I'm asked, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions, councillors? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just before we move on, I'll just make sure that Councillor Burgoyne, you're still at Coolin Emergency Services Centre and can hear us okay?
I can hear you perfectly, thank you, as well as before.
Okay, cheers. Okay, Miss Erin Van Noort, with regards to item 12.3.1, development application, use not listed, lot 101, Binningup Road. Welcome, Erin.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to be here again. Erin Van Noort, I'm Community Relations Advisor for Albemarle, and I'm based at Kemerton. So Albemarle have chosen Kemerton in the southwest to make one of its biggest investments anywhere in the world in lithium processing. In doing so, it is creating a new value-adding industry of global significance on our doorstep. So I find that pretty exciting, supporting the drive to reduce carbon emissions and provide clean energy into the future. We're close to producing battery-grade product from the raw material mined at Greenbushes as we complete construction and commissioning of processing trains 1 and 2. And we do this in the context of global demand for lithium being stronger than ever before. To meet this demand, Kemerton is being considered to build 2 additional processing trains which would double the existing capacity and create greater local employment and business opportunities. Today, Albemarle has already invested over $1 billion at Kemerton, with 95% of this figure spent within Australia. Additionally, 99% of our operational contracts have been awarded to local businesses. That's within a 200-kilometre radius of Kemerton. These are businesses within the Shire of Harvey and Greater Bunbury area, so you can see the value to our region is clear. There are already nearly 400 permanent roles have been recruited for trains 1 and 2, and over 83% of these have been filled by people that live locally, and that includes myself. There is a strong commitment by Albemarle on local recruitment where possible. We took valuable lessons from the construction of the existing project and the first 2 trains at Kemerton, which required a workforce of about 1,800 people at peak. We learned that we needed to bring in 60 to 70% of that construction workforce from outside the region, as we required more skilled workers to build the existing site than could be found in the local area. Those coming from outside the region were accommodated anywhere we could find a vacancy. This led to complex logistics and multiple vehicle movements to get everyone to and from site safely each day. There were undesirable impacts with temporary car parks, workforce taking up tourist accommodation, and there were challenges supporting the health and well-being of a workforce working 12-hour shifts and being accommodated across various locations. So we've learned that we need to, for future investment, do things differently. To support the future expansion at Kemerton, we have proposed to build a central accommodation solution to house part of the construction workforce that comes from outside the region in a purpose-built, high-quality village near Binningup. This is unique and not typical of the workforce accommodation found elsewhere. The proposed accommodation village is essential to enable future investment in trains 3 and 4 to double our capacity at Kemerton. The proposed village is the best way we can manage the well-being of the workforce and lessen the impact on the community and tourism accommodation providers as we have done for our existing project. We set a rigorous criteria for a village site and investigated over 14 locations, consulting extensively along the way with local government and state government and others. Our focus was for a site close to Kemerton with predominantly cleared land, access to services, roads where traffic impacts can be managed, and within a community type setting. The Binningup site, which is on private land, uses less than 17% of the 144 hectare property. The agricultural use that currently exists on the land will continue around the village on that same parcel of land. We've also worked with the closest neighbours to address their concerns by redesigning the access road coming off Taranto Road further away from their property and extending the boundary fence beyond the designated requirements. We're genuinely committed to engage with the local community, which includes several people who live in Binningup who work within our operations. We've recently re-scoped our original social impact assessment for Binningup and have commenced that work. This will lead to the development of a social impact management plan in collaboration with the community, which will be the framework for management of the accommodation facilities going forward. In creating the proposed village, we're investing in infrastructure that doesn't currently exist near Binningup, and we're keen to engage with the community on how those facilities can be of benefit. The social impact assessment will also establish a mechanism for ongoing engagement through the entire process and life cycle of the proposed village. We are meeting with the Shire soon to discuss our existing community investment program and local opportunities for bidding up and surrounding townships. A lot of work has progressed since our early consultation sessions when we met over 2 days with members of the community in bidding up in May, and we're keen to share the results of further studies and thinking that has occurred since then. So, in summary, Albemarle is very motivated to further invest in lithium production at Kemerton, and these decisions are currently being made. Unprecedented times to be, expanding as we only just get up and running, and to be duplicating the project at this stage is very exciting. But we cannot invest here without a workers' accommodation solution. And I think that's understood. And if Albemarle invests out of Australia, that is a massive economic loss for this region. We have progressed a lot of work since our community consultation sessions in May, and we're keen to engage and discuss those learnings. We understand that we have a lot of information to share and a lot of engagement to progress. This will take time. We're completely committed to working with the community to understand concerns, to build knowledge and to find ways to manage issues as they arise. And in closing, I'd like to say we look forward to Council supporting our public advertising for our proposal as we continue to engage with the community and stakeholders for the best outcomes for bidding up and the Shire and the South West. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Is there any questions, councillors? Okay, Mr. Matt Raymond for item 12.3.1, development application use not listed, lot 101, Bidding Up Road. Welcome.
Good evening, councillors, staff. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon or this evening in support of the proposed residential or temporary residential village. The item you're considering this evening is to initiate the advertising of the DA proposal for formal public comment. This will enable due process for meaningful community feedback to respond to queries and concerns the community have on the proposal. I think I speak on behalf of Albemarle when that we understand that and appreciate the community's concerns or comments raised this evening. This means that these sorts of things obviously need to be addressed as part of any documentation and ongoing management. So Albemarle understands it has a responsibility to be a good neighbour here, will be part of the community for the next 10 to 15 years. So they understand that the matters such as traffic, noise and appropriate interfacing to adjoining farmers is crucial and should be managed. So this means things like funneling traffic via Taranto Road for residents only to the site. This means establishing vegetative screening to Bidding Up Road, and this means compliance with the Department of Health's strict requirements for fencing or other means to prevent spray drift, so not to encumber those farmers. Albemarle understands these factors and will work with those farmers to make sure they are comfortable with the outcome. As mentioned before, the village is an ancillary footprint to the overall lot, being approximately 17% of the lot, so it is not a substantial portion of the lot. The village also is, as previously mentioned, not located on priority agricultural land, so we feel this could work and can coexist appropriately. We wish to reiterate that the proposal you're considering this evening is not seeking the endorsement of the development application itself. It is purely seeking Council's decision to initiate the advertising of the proposal, and we therefore welcome and support the Shire's recommendation in the report to initiate the advertising of the proposal for community feedback. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions, councillors? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, item 9, announcements by presiding members or CEO without discussion. Is nil. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. We have the ordinary council meeting of Tuesday 28th of June 2022. The recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 28th of June 2022 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Move Councillor Capgrego. Councillor Crispin second. Is there any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. We have the special council meeting of Tuesday 5th of July 2022. The officer recommendation that minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday 5th of July 2022 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Councillor Dickinson moving. Seconder. Councillor Lovett. Is there any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. We have the Alcoa Harvey Sustainability Fund Advisory Committee, which was held on Wednesday the 6th of July 2022. The recommendation that minutes of the council meeting held on Wednesday 6th of July 2022 as printed be received and the recommendations therein be adopted by council. Move Councillor Carboni. Second, Councillor Campbell. Any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12, officers' reports. So we have recommendations contained in the officers' reports were adopted by exception resolution with the exception of the following items. That with the exception of item 12.1.1, 12.1.3, 12.1.4, 12.3.1, 12.4.2 to 12.4.3 and 12.5.1, which are to be considered separately. The officer's recommendations for items 12.1.2, which is a corporate business plan, 12.1.5, lease renewal for Hope Christian College, 12.1.6, Council Action Register, 12.2.1, Walga Advocacy Position on the Management of Bushfire Brigades, 12.2.2, Sienna Grove, Tuscany Grove, Binning Up London Plane Trees, and 12.5.2, Community Sporting and Rec Funds, Harvey Bulls, 12.5.3, Coastal Communities, to be adopted as a council resolution. 12.2.3. We'll get it there. Okay. As well. Okay.
Sorry. As on the screen.
As on the screen.
Yeah.
So is that as clear as muddy water? Okay.
Are you going to move that or?
Yeah. Oh. Did you have a question?
Well, I thought I'd bring item 12.3.1 forward to the top to be dealt with. Only that item to be brought forward, so to be dealt with first.
Well, it's getting better fourth one. Probably won't be too far behind. But if you want to discuss that first, I can bring that forward if you wish.
Yeah, okay. That's only so many people, isn't it?
I thought everyone was enjoying
the
meeting, Councillor Carboni. Okay. So the exception resolution, is everyone happy? Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Dickinson. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Okay, we'll move to deal with item 12.3.1, development application, use not listed, workforce accommodation, lot 10196 at Binning Up Road, Binning Up. We have an officer's recommendation.
I'll move it.
Move Councillor Carboni, seconder. Councillor Campbell, seconding. Okay, do you wish to speak? An amendment?
I have an alternate motion.
Yes, Councillor Campbell. All right. Yep. Councillor Campbell.
Is that a... Councillor Campbell, were you seconding that motion?
Sorry.
Oh. No.
Okay, is there a seconder? So the motion will lapse for want of a seconder. Councillor Campbell, you have an amendment.
I do, thanks, Mr. President. As
We
everyone...
Councillor Campbell moving the amendment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Beach. Alternative motion. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Councillor Beach, for seconding my alternate motion. So hopefully it's up on the screen and I will read it out. That Council 1, pursuant to clause 4.2.5a of the Shire of Harvey's planning scheme number 1, determines that the proposed use not listed detailed in the application for development approval for lot 101, number 96, Binning Up Road, Binning Up, can be considered as workforce accommodation, which is not consistent with the objectives and purposes of the general farming scheme. 2, directs the CEO to prepare a responsible authority report to the Regional Joint Development Assessment Panel, recommending the application be refused on the basis the proposed use of workforce accommodation is not consistent with the objectives and purposes of the general farming zone, and pursuant to clause 4.2.5a of the Shire of Harvey's District Planning Scheme number 1, the use is not permitted.
Seconder, wish to speak? Oh, sorry. I thought you just given us a rundown. Sorry, boss. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Councillors, I offer the following. The site is zoned general farming under the scheme. The policy statement contained within tables 27 to 29, general farming zone of the scheme, states the following objectives. 1, that the local government intends to encourage these areas to continue to be used for viable large-scale farming activity. 2, local government will encourage and promote good farming, animal husbandry and soil conservation. And 3, some limited tourist and recreational activity may be permitted where no adverse effect to the primary agricultural purpose of the zone will result. There are no other clauses of the scheme which give objectives or purposes for the general farming zone. Clearly, the proposal is not consistent with any of these 3 objectives. The application removes the land which could otherwise be used for large-scale farming, and the proposal is not for a tourist or recreational land use. It is therefore not consistent with the objectives and purposes of the general farming zone. Approval to this proposal would set an undesirable precedent for like proposals to establish on general farming zone properties across the Shire. The proponent's initial presentation to Council indicated that the Binning Up site is their preferred site. Councillors, is this the best use of this land? To me, it appears to be a quick and easy solution, which uses the use not listed clause in our scheme to circumvent the planning process in order to achieve a desired outcome, and in doing so reduces the planning time frame for the proponent. I understand the issues surrounding the availability of housing and rental market, but I believe we have missed a great opportunity to have the proponent establish this accommodation in another more suitable location within the Shire, where it can support local business and industry and utilise already established facilities. I also have concerns surrounding the impact on the conservation category wetland, where the report has identified that some of the proposed units are located within the CCW and many are within the 50-metre buffer. So how is this going to be addressed? I have concerns around the TEC woodland and the impact the building would have on these established chewits. I have concerns surrounding the capacity of the current reticulated sewage and the proposed establishment of a wastewater treatment plant. And the report refers to potential floodplains and acid sulphate soils, all of which will impact on this development. So how is this going to be addressed? I have received numerous phone calls, emails and messages from the Binning Up community, which I'm sure we all have, who in the majority are not supportive of this application and in fact I feel raise very valid concerns, particularly around the social impact and the strain on the current infrastructure of Binningup. Therefore, I ask councillors to support this amendment, this alternate motion, and determine not to support this as a use not listed.
Councillor Beach, seconder, do you wish?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair. Councillors, we probably all appreciate the Albemarle development in the Kemerton industrial area, and particularly as it's in the Shire of Harvey, and the job opportunities that it has provided and the export dollars that it will provide in years to come. I also appreciate the hard work and the often undervalued farmers of our district, and in this instance I don't think these two operations can coexist side by side, and that's I'm supporting Councillor Campbell's motion, and I won't go over what she's already said, but I do hope that the Shire can work with Albemarle to find a more suitable location, and hopefully we can get a development that we can all be happy with and live with.
Just a question.
Is it? Yes, Councillor Burney.
Just a question to Mr Hall, and it's just over the process. If this gets refused here, or this motion gets up tonight, obviously it will. The proponent can take it to SAT, and Mr Consolio, is that right? Yeah, Consolio said that if this gets refused, it won't go to DAP. It's end of story. If this gets refused, goes to SAT, gets sent back to council, and then has to get approved, does it then go to DAP, or is it all over?
Through Sheila, based on the information that we've been able to obtain, I am not actually supportive of the comment that was made by Mr Cotsoglu in terms of the fact that this decision isn't appellable. It's our understanding that this, as a decision of council, is actually an appellable decision and can actually go to the tribunal. I'm not aware of any ones that have ever gone to the tribunal in regard to the determination or otherwise as to whether or not a use is considered consistent with the zoning of the properties or not. So there's two scenarios that can play out. One, the tribunal finds in favour of the decision of council, and then that reaffirms that the position of council is that this is an ex-use or not a permitted use, and therefore the DAP wouldn't be in a position to be able to determine it in a favourable manner. If the tribunal determined that council's decision was poorly based for whatever reason, and that they considered that the use may be consistent with the zoning of the property, they would have the opportunity to request that council actually undertake the process of advertising and then referring through to the JDAP. The tribunal can't say that council has to determine it. It always needs to be determined by JDAP. They may just put in that extra process to say the original decision we don't support. So that's right.
Speaker against?
So I'll speak against the motion, and it's not that I don't understand the emotions of the bidding up community, I do. But it's what we're basically here to deal with today. Is this a use not listed, or is it not? All that other stuff comes after. Whether there's spray drift or sewerage or whatever it is, all comes after the advertising period. This is all about whether this can be deemed as a use not listed or not, as was pointed out by Mr. Raymond. So is it a use not listed or what? An extraction licence is a use not listed on farming land, and there's plenty of them around Binningup. Indeed, the crooked carrots are use not listed on rural property. There's many other examples of uses not listed on public properties. And indeed, when you look at the accommodation camp that was brought up earlier, that was on rural property up at Worsley. So we can refuse this. I mean, this is the Binningup limestone pit all over again, fellas. It's going to go to SAT, it's going to get appealed. We're going to, as Ms Ferguson brought up earlier about the lawyers' fees, we're going to have to fund it, tens of thousands of dollars, and it's going to get sent straight back to council where you're going to have to vote for it because it'll be considered a use not listed. So you can vote against it and everybody can walk out of here today and feel good about themselves, but you'll see it come back here and then you'll have to put your hand up and vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Burney. Noting that they are your personal views on SAT, and not those given on professional advice. Are there any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Crispin.
I'd just like to second Councillor Campbell and Councillor Beach's comments, and I would also like to note that I believe there's alternative locations within the Harvey of Shire Harvey, that could have been better suited for this. I am in support of obviously the arm barrel and everything to do with Kemerton. It's just this being the specific zoning and everything was involved with it. I can't see it going ahead with that area with the use not listed. That's all.
Any other speaker against? Confusion in the ring. Just making clarification on splitting into two. Councillor Campbell, are you happy to remove direct? Take the generals out and put authorise?
Sorry.
Okay, is there any other speakers for? Against? Councillor Campbell, you want to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, I remind you of the objectives of the general farming zone. That we should be encouraging the continued use for viable large-scale farming activity to encourage and promote good farming and limit activity where no adverse effect to the primary agricultural purpose of the zone will result. Well, I see this development having not only adverse effect to the agricultural purpose, but also environmental and social impact on Binningup and the surrounds. I reinforce Councillor Beach's comments regarding Albemarle and acknowledge and appreciate the investment Albemarle has made within the Shire of Harvey. And I'd be happy to work further with Albemarle with a similar proposal on a more appropriate site. So I ask councillors to support this alternate motion and determine not to support this use not listed.
Okay, councillors. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? One. Motion is carried. Okay, we'll move back. That's absolute majority required on that one. Okay, councillors, move back to item 12.1.1, Harvey Community Precinct Update for Direction. We have Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment for this item.
So we have someone move the motion. Councillor Beach, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My amendment is that Council 1 notes the minutes of the Harvey Community Precinct Reference Group and other meetings as provided in attachments 2, 3, 4 and 5. 2. Notes the two options presented in attachment 1 and the Harvey Precinct Reference Group preference for option 2. 3. Delays the council endorsement of either option until the August 2022 OCM. And 4. Requests the CEO to table this item at the August 2022 Concept Forum. And the reason for this is to allow Council the opportunity to further discuss both options prior to endorsement.
So, is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Bromham. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Councillor Bromham. Councillors, it's with regret that I move this amendment, as I'm sure staff and community alike would like a decision to be made at this time. However, I feel that Council is not yet in a position to make a well-informed decision. Deferring the endorsement will ensure due diligence and consideration by Council is given. The designs for the two options presented are significantly different in that option 1 meets the project brief that was developed through the consultation with key stakeholders and endorsed by Council. Option 2 has been formulated and is recommended by the Harvey CRG and presents quite a shift from the project brief. This is a significant project for the Shire of Harvey, particularly for the township of Harvey. And I believe the key element of this project is to ensure we are planning for the future, ensuring the precinct is accommodating the growth and needs of Harvey for the next 50 years. I'm also cognizant of the emotional attachment some of the community has to some of the buildings used by the current community groups and the strong desire that has emanated from the Harvey CRG to retain these buildings. I also acknowledge the work done to date by staff and the architect. Therefore, want to ensure that all information provided is fully considered by Council. I don't believe councillors have been afforded that opportunity to discuss both options, and I believe there are still many questions to be answered before committing to either option. I therefore ask councillors to support this request to defer the endorsement of either option at this time and encourage councillors to attend the August Concept Forum to ensure a full appreciation process is applied and Council is in a fully informed position to make a decision.
Councillor Bromham, second, do you wish to?
I'll hold.
Is there a speaker against the amendment? Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. The option 1 wasn't developed in consultation with the stakeholder group. Option 1 has always been opposed by the stakeholders in moving the library away from the natural and heritage listed facade that says Harvey Memorial Library. It doesn't make sense to move the library up to Gibbs Street away from that. People look at it and go, well, where is the library? The reference group have spent hundreds of hours cumulatively and individually working with the consultant, working with each other, working with their networks, which they were asked to do. And they have come to the conclusion that option 2 best suits 99.9% of the community's needs. At a meeting here that involved the majority of councillors who, although I'm not on the reference committee, were invited to speak and offer their opinions, it was agreed that option 2 be presented to Council for endorsement. I asked about 5 times as the chair of that committee. There was no objection to option 2 being put forward to the committee for endorsement. If we need to workshop it a bit more at Council at a concept forum that's actually behind closed doors and the community can't see those discussions, I wonder the value of having a reference committee and members of the community in the first place giving up their hard-earned time, their diligence in educating a lot of us about the history of the buildings and how many of them were either fundraised or blood, sweat and tears were put in place by them. Not all of those buildings were built by the Shire. They were built by other groups and acquired by the Shire over a period of time. There has been some detail that does need to be defined at the next stage, and the architect and all of the community reference group
agree that there is some fine tuning to do. I take the point about the buildings being remaining, including the contentious RSL building, but that actually leaving those in place at the moment and letting the next stage of design determine that actually saves a bucket load of money in demolishing and removing those buildings, and particularly those buildings that people want to remain in. Those buildings also give the option for other meeting rooms and repurposing during the next stage of design. So I would have to disagree with Councillor Campbell, although well argued. I would have to respect the fact that the community reference group have been very diligent in their consultation with their groups, with each other, and the greater community. And I'll take this opportunity to thank them very much for that, irrespective of the outcome of today. But I do wonder again, if we're not going to listen to them, why on earth did we engage them? We could have just workshopped it at a council forum and told them what we want. That's not what our charter is as a council and as a shire. Our shire is to be inclusive, to inform, to communicate, to respect. And I suggest as councillors we actually need to do that with this decision today.
Speaker for amendment. Speaker against. Councillor Capter again.
I tend to agree with what Councillor Coleman has said, 100%. I've sat through every reference group meeting on this decision, and it's a very hard decision. It's a lot of money to be spent, and it is for the long term. I can only support Councillor Campbell's amendment only if we do not, excuse me, do not waste any more time comparing options 1 and 2. The reference group has clearly made a point that option 2 suits what the community's needs are. And as a councillor, I have to support what the community wants, not what I want. I think that if we were going to do any more workshopping around option 2, and we need to get some more information, then I could support Councillor Campbell's decision to defer till next month. I also think that we've thrashed this out for a long time, and there is a lot of community people out there who really just want to know what's going on and have not had the opportunity to get the correct information. And my concern is that if we go another month without giving them direction, that it will just paint a very bad picture on the whole development. So I have to say that in consideration of what's been said here tonight, I have to support Councillor Coleman. I would like to put this to bed tonight if we can, and go with what was initially decided was going to be brought to council, and that was to endorse option 2. There will always be opportunities to refine option 2 when we go into the detailed design. Thank you.
Councillor Burgoyne, you had your hand up?
I did, and I'm not sure if I'm speaking for or against it.
That's why we just thought we'd let you decide, right?
Well, both sides have got some very good points. My gut tells me that there is still discussions to be held. If only tonight we had another presentation from someone who wants to see one of the buildings demolished that we intend keeping. There's other people that want to see buildings demolished. We're talking about demolishing. So while there is a basic acceptance of option 2, I'm not entirely sure I want to go with a blanket approach, just going, oh yeah, hell with it, that's what we're going to do. It's not a small thing, and I want to see it done right. I mean, it's already changed from where we started with, really. what we started with was something that I could look back in 20 years' time if I'm still around and say, yeah, this is a great thing. We have changed that now, and I want to make sure that the changes are correct. So I guess I'm speaking for the amendment or the substantive motion, and well, what will become? Oh God, I can't remember how it goes. But anyway, speaking for Councillor Campbell's motion, and I just want to make sure we get it right. That's all. So that's where I am. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Burgon. Is there a speaker against?
I have a question.
Question.
I have a question to staff. I think there is still some confusion, and I'm a little bit confused myself, and I say that because of what's being said tonight. If the buildings are retained, which was what the recommendation from the last advisory group was, that the current building that the Art and Craft group used, being the old St Anne's classroom building, the RSL building is retained as for the use of playgroup and or RSL. There's been no use identified for the health building, which is now used by staff. What's going to be the use of that building, but what's going to be the use of the Art and Craft building if that's retained? Is the Art and Craft, the current users of the Art and Craft building, going to be in that building, or are they going to be in a new facility that has been identified and planned on the master plan that was presented at the last advisory group?
The discussions from my perspective in regards to the retention of the existing arts and craft building and the infant health building were to retain those historical buildings. It's not my understanding that by retaining those buildings that the art and craft group would remain eventually in that art and craft building. Because there is a purpose-built facility being constructed for that group. So there are no identified uses at this stage in regards to the future use of those two buildings. When the master planning was being undertaken, it was to work with identified community groups that would be part of that precinct and build them purpose-built facilities as part of that precinct. So if there are other uses from those groups on those existing buildings, then there is a facility double up, and that's my understanding. I would like to say that the basis for this project came from a report back in 2013 where there was engagement with a number of stakeholder groups to progress Harvey Community Precinct. So this isn't a conversation that has just begun. It's something that's emanated from 2013 in looking at the facilities which at that time was seen to be not fit for purpose for those groups, and that's how the planning arose for this project. So yeah, it's determining whether the information and all of the studies that have been undertaken are to what end as part of this precinct project and what we're providing for the community.
Is there any other speakers for? Councillor Bronwyn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak for the motion. People, because I understand, both sides of the argument, I want to make sure from a council point of view we get whatever we're doing in the future correct. Now the reason, the reason people like these things is because they're familiar, because we're creatures of habit, and these buildings, all these things are markers in our lives, and that's why people love history. However, looking back is looking backwards without considering the future and future generations is like driving forward by looking in the rear vision mirror. We need to understand what people need in the future as well, and ensure whatever we develop allows those things to progress. So I support the recommendation to go for the next month, to give us all the opportunity to ensure whether it's options 1 or 2, doesn't really matter. It's to make sure we get it right and that what we put there fulfills what people want now and what will give us the best outcome into future years. Thank you.
And the Speaker against. Council Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To say I'm disappointed that we're actually discussing this motion is an understatement. The Harvey community has been widely consulted, and they are the people that are going to have to live with this development. The reference groups have been working diligently to get to this point, and I would say rightly would feel very undervalued and ask, why do we even bother going to all those meetings to get this right? We started off with option 1, we ended up with an option 2, and now we've got an option 2 revised. Option 1 was firmly rejected by the community of Harvey and the reference group. Reference has been made to the RSL. Demolishing the RSL or keeping it doesn't impact upon the footprint of the current option 2 revised. I have got my own views on the RSL, but it doesn't impact upon the development. The Arts and Craft new building that's just been mentioned is in stage 2 and may not get constructed for 4, 5, 6 years. And in that time, that development could very well change. It doesn't impact upon the library and the CRC and the radio to the north of the development. I just want to know, how much more debate do we actually need? We've done this to death. I don't know whether we've discussed anything in my time on more occasions and had more answers than we have on this one. Option 2 is off the table. That was decided at the last reference group. Option 2 is the development that, or the revised option 2 is the development has been endorsed by the reference group. We should go with that, and I cannot support that alternative motion on the table right now.
Another speaker for. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The arguments against Councillor Campbell's motions are essentially discussing the options on the table, and that is not what the motion is about. The motion is about deferring this for a month so that we can have the discussions about the options. There are obviously still a lot of questions and a lot of things that need to be discussed. The reference group, their work's completely acknowledged by myself in saying this, but they are a reference group, not a decision-making body. We are the decision-making body, and we need to make sure that we get this right. Another month is not going to hurt when this has been this was started from the research that I've done and the reading I've done. This started close to 20 years ago. 2013, we did a walk through the site with previous Shire President, previous CEO. This has been sitting around here now for 10 to 20 years. Another month to make sure that we make the right decision for the community is not going to hurt this. In fact, it's just going to make sure that we do make the right decision. So the details of option 1 and 2 are not relevant to this discussion. The discussion is whether we defer this for a month so that we can then have those discussions on the options. So I fully support Councillor Campbell's motion.
Okay. Councillor Campbell, right of reply.
Thank you, councillors. And as Councillor Lovett said, the amendment is purely to defer the decision till next month. That's what it's about, because I feel that I'm certainly not in a position to make a well-informed decision on this project moving forward. Now, I do acknowledge the community reference group and the input that they've put in. And I know that some have put in very long hours, and I've attended most of their meetings as an observer. But we are the decision-making authority, not the community reference group. But it would not be very smart of us to ignore what they have endorsed, and that being option 2. So I acknowledge that. But my amendment is that I feel Council is not in a position to make this decision today, because if we do, the ramifications are large, and it's an expensive project, and I want to make sure that we get this across the line and we make the right decision. So I ask councillors to consider deferring this decision until next month, and that we bring it to the concept forum and we have an open and frank discussion and answer all of these questions that councillors have even raised during this debate. Thank you.
Okay. I'll put the amendment. Is there anyone against the amendment? Okay. Amendment carried 7-4. Okay, that now becomes a substantive motion. Okay. Is there likely to be any more discussions? I think we've probably done it pretty well. Okay, so I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried. Oh, sorry, you're against, sorry.
Can we have
Two
it
against?
listed that we voted against it, please?
Can
Can we
no
have it
requested?
listed that we voted against it?
Yeah. And 3?
4.
Okay, Councillor Burgoyne, can you still hear us okay? At Coolman
Absolutely.
Emergency Services Centre. You still there?
Absolutely, Mr. President. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
And enjoying the debate.
Either for or against.
Okay, excellent. Okay, moving on to item 12.1.2. No, we've done that one. No, 3? Sorry. Yeah, we'll tick that one. Corporate Business Plan 2022 to 2026. We have a officer's recommendation. Councillor Campbell. Moving. Got a seconder, Councillor Lovett. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 11-0. Absolute majority. Okay, we'll leave item 12.1.4 to be discussed with item 12.4.3. What's easier? Okay. What is it on? Here we go. I'd like to move a motion that we adjourn for 15 minutes and return at, Jesus, what, 5:51? Yes. A seconder, Councillor Bromwell. Thank you. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Yeah. Where's it? On here, try it. Make it 500.
Okay, welcome back. I was hoping to be 5:51, but we're just a tad over. Just touching base again, Councillor Burgoyne, you're still attending from Cooling Up Emergency Services Centre. You can hear us okay?
No. Bergie, stop looking at something else.
You there, Bergie?
Oh, I've got us on mute. So
Okay.
that's my fault. Here we go.
Okay, welcome back. Just touching base, Councillor Burgoyne, still at Cooling Up Emergency Services Centre, and you hear us okay, mate?
Absolutely, and thank you for the break. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Okay. Moving on to item 12.1.4, Workforce and Diversity Plan. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bromham moving.
Yeah.
Councillor Crispin second. And we have an amendment from Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. As is on the screen.
You're welcome. Yes.
Go on.
There is seconder. Councillor Crispin seconding.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Crispin, for that. As discussed earlier this afternoon, I'd like councillors to consider bringing forward the community grants funding position into the 22-23 budget and reallocate the $100,000 from the Harvey Heritage Precinct in order to fund that position. I believe that Council has some significant projects moving forward, and I believe bringing forward this position will enable Council to search and secure suitable grant funding to support those projects moving forward.
Councillor Crispin as a seconder, do you wish to?
As Councillor Campbell said, I believe also that it would be a great resource for the community to have within our shire. So yeah, as we spoke earlier.
You're a speaker against the amendment.
Question?
Question, thank you, Mr. President. Do we need the full $100,000 for wages, is number one. And number two, what percentage of time will be spent on getting funding for the Shire versus the community? Because I'm not confident that we would be funding a community grant writer when there are a number of community grant writers in the Shire of Harvey.
Through the Chair, that level of detail hasn't actually been worked through yet, as we had not anticipated this being brought forward a year. But ordinarily in our position descriptions, you know, a percentage allocation would go, say, 40, 20, 20, 10, so forth, and so that we also include all the other administrative roles that would be required. But we don't have that level of information.
And in regards to the allocation of the $100,000, it would not only encompass salary but also the on-costs as well that are associated with that position. So I would imagine that that would be would equate to around $100,000.
Councillor Beach.
Yeah, question please, Mr. President. If I'm reading this amendment correctly, the grants officer who we were going to fund in year one is now going to be shifted over to year two, is that right, or have I got it wrong?
No, the other way around.
The other way around, and the destination officer is going from year one to year. Wouldn't they fund, you know, isn't it cost neutral? Why do we need another 100,000 if you're shifting one employee that was identified for year one into year two, and the year two coming over to year one? I would have thought that would have been fairly cost neutral. Sorry, yeah.
From my discussions, it's that second part of the amendment is to allow for some operational salaries for the CEO to utilise as she sees fit. I mean, we've just had the Workforce and Diversity Plan presented to us, and out of that came the need to look at staffing levels, and I think this provides the CEO an opportunity to address any shortfalls in the next financial year. So by moving out the Destination Events Officer position to year 2 and keeping that funding aside for the CEO to use at her discretion.
So basically, this is increasing the salaries budget by $100,000.
Correct.
Is there a speaker against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Campbell?
Nothing further to add, thanks, Mr. President.
Okay. So I'll put the amendment. Is anyone against the amendment? 3. Okay, the amendment is carried. 9-3. 8-3, sorry. Okay. Substantive motion. Is there any other further discussions required, councillors? Okay. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 8-3. Okay, item 12.4.2. Asset Management Plan 2022 to 2032. Move Councillor Bromham. Seconder. Councillor Campbell. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay, there, Councillor Beach. All good?
All good.
Yeah, all good. Okay.
Can't find where we're up to. Fingers aren't working fast enough.
12.4.2.
Yeah,
Asset Management Plan.
I'm on the same page as you, sir.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no discussion, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Okay, item 12.4.3, Annual Budget 2022 to 2023. We have Officer's Recommendation 1 of 9. 1 of 8. Okay, so schedule of fees and charges. So the recommendation 1. Move Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Lovett. Any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 11-0, absolute majority. Of the recommendation at 2 of 9. Move Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Dickinson. Is there any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 11-0, absolute majority. What's the recommendation 3 of 9? So there's 5 addendums. Councillors?
Yeah, I'll go with that one.
Okay. Councillor Bromham. The seconder. Councillor Campbell. Okay, Councillor Campbell, you were moving an amendment to adjust the workforce plan?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Bromwell. Is there likely to be any discussion, Councillor Beach?
Just a query, adopt the draft budget. I'm not meant to be in the room for one of those items. Or am I in the wrong spot?
No.
On the screen.
The recommendation has been split so that all of those financial and proximity interests are removed. So
Okay.
this first section is just the budget that
the
goes
end.
removed.
Yep,
Okay, thank
you're
you.
out next month.
Yep,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. 9-2. Amendment. Okay. Here comes the substantive motion. We'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 9-2, absolute majority. Councillor Beach, we'll excuse you from the chambers now, sir.
Do you want a drink while I'm here?
Are you building a new house or something?
Sure.
Okay, recommendation 4 of 9. Move Councillor Lovett. Second, Councillor Campbell. Any discussion, councillors? Okay, we'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 10-0, absolute majority.
Oh.
Motion was carried 10-0, absolute majority.
Thank you, sir.
Recommendation 5 of 9. Move Councillor Lovett. Seconder. Councillor Bromwell.
Bergie's got a question.
Bergie. Councillor Burgon. All good?
Oh, he wants to vote.
I was just going to second it, but you
Not fast enough.
I'll pencil you in for the next one. Okay, is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 10-0, absolute majority. Carried at 10-0, Councillor Dickinson, absolute majority. Recommendation 6 of 9. Move Councillor Burgoyne. Got a seconder. Councillor Dickinson. So any discussion, councillors? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 10-0, absolute majority.
Okay, councillors, we're up to recommendation 7 of 9, that council accepts and endorses jobs RC0039 and RC0014 into the 2022-23 municipal fund budget. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bromham, seconder. Councillor Dickinson. Any discussion? Anyone against? Carried by absolute majority.
Sounds right.
Thank you.
That carried, Councillor Gillett.
Okay, officer recommendation 8 of 9, rates, concession, charges, payment options, penalties and discounts. We have a recommendation there, councillors. We have moved Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Crispin. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 11-0, absolute majority. Officer recommendation 8 of 8.
Oh, yeah.
Councillor Campbell moving, second Councillor Lovett. Likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 11-0. Okay, item 12.5, community and lifestyle. 12.5.1, Grow, Cook, Eat, Create, request for fee waiver. We have moved Councillor Lovett, seconded. Councillor Campbell. Councillor Lovett, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This organisation is now open to people of all abilities. They have NDIS funding, their staffing has increased significantly, and I believe that while we can still support them, my motion as per the screen is to alter the fee structure so that we're reducing 1 day of subsidy per week over the next 3 years, so that they're then either full paying or they have their own premises in that time. I don't believe it will impact on their level of service to our community, and I also believe that that they have the capacity to do so. And by doing this, we're not precluding them from applying for grants or anything like that in the future, so we can still support them, but I believe that they have the capacity and that we can do this.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Bromham. Councillor Lovett.
Pretty much, as I just said, I believe that they've got the capacity because the attendees now have the ability to, their NDI is funded, and they have a large staffing, they have a corporate vehicle, and just the point 4 is similar, sorry, it's being silly, but it's the same as the first one. Yeah. So I believe that they have the capacity and it won't impact on our community or their service.
Councillor Bromham, speak second.
No, I agree. I think it's becoming a viable bit. Sorry, turn this on. I agree. I think it's becoming a viable business as well through the NDIS and also other customs. So there will be no need to support them in the future.
Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Okay, I'll put the amendment. Is anyone against the amendment? Amendments carried. 11-0. Okay, substantive now becomes the substantive motion. Let's move Councillor Lovett, the seconder. Councillor Campbell. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. 11-0. Bergie, against? 10-1. Okay. No, that. Yeah. 10-1. Okay. Elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. The motion from Councillor Campbell. Okay. You're okay with that recommendation, Councillor Campbell?
Yes. Thank you.
Happy to move that, Councillor Campbell. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dickinson. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 11-0. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting is nil. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given is nil. Reports of members. Some there listed and others are in the big tin can.
They will be.
Okay.
One day.
Item 17, new business of an urgent nature introduced by the meeting is nil. Now, item 18, matters behind closed doors. Move Councillor Burgoyne. Seconder, Councillor Crispin. The council moved behind closed doors at 6:14. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is, as there is no... Oh, we've got to get back on. Okay. Item 18.175. Can I just thank councillors and staff for today? It has been a bit of a marathon journey, but I think tomorrow's a new day and things will be ticking along. So from council to staff, thank you very much for all the work that you put in. It's been a pretty horrendous, probably 12 months to 2 years, so it's greatly appreciated. So as there's no more further business to discuss, we'll declare the meeting closed at 6:19.